The bell rang, echoing through the school corridors as students poured into the science lab, chattering and laughing. The smell of disinfectant and chalk dust lingered in the air. At the back of the room, a few boys, the so-called kings of Year 10, were already slouched over a table, tossing crumpled paper at each other and sniggering. The new girl, Emily, walked in quietly. She was small, pale, with a nervous smile and a backpack that looked far too heavy for her thin shoulders. It was her first week at Southern Ridge High, and she already felt the stares burning into her back. She found a seat near the window, hoping to blend in, but that only made her a target. "Oi, new girl," called Jake, the ringleader. He had that confident smirk every bully wears like a badge of honor. "You reckon you can mix chemicals without blowing us up?" The other boys laughed loudly, slapping the desk. Emily tried to ignore them. She opened her notebook, her fingers trembling slightly. Mr. Harris hadn't arrived yet, bad timing. She could feel their footsteps behind her before she even looked up. Jake leaned over her shoulder, close enough that she could smell the cheap cologne and arrogance. "What's this?" he said, snatching her notebook. "Oh, look at this, she's already writing like she's Einstein." "Give it back," Emily said softly, but her voice cracked. That made them laugh even harder. Another boy, Liam, grabbed her bag and upended it onto the lab table. Pens, a half-eaten apple, and a worn photo of an older man in an army uniform spilled out. Jake picked up the photo and frowned. "Who's this, your boyfriend?" he sneered. Emily's jaw tightened. "That's my dad." Jake smirked. "Oh, cute. What's he gonna do? March in here with a tank?" The room erupted in laughter again, but just then, Jake's elbow brushed a tray of beakers. A small vial rolled off and shattered on the floor, releasing a faint hiss and a strange, acrid smell. The boys jumped back, coughing. Emily, without hesitation, grabbed a pair of gloves and safely neutralized the spill with a steady hand. "Bloody hell," Liam muttered, watching her with wide eyes. Jake, however, wasn't done showing off. "Still doesn't make you special," he said, giving her shoulder a shove. She stumbled, right onto the lab table, knocking over another flask. "Oi, Jake!" someone shouted from the back, but it was too late. The liquid splashed across Jake's hand, and within seconds, smoke curled from his skin. He screamed, clutching it as the pain hit. Emily moved fast, faster than anyone else. She grabbed the emergency rinse bottle and sprayed his hand, her face calm and focused while everyone else froze in panic. When Mr. Harris finally stormed in, Jake was shaking, his mates pale and silent. Emily stood beside him, unflinching, her voice steady as she explained what happened. For the first time, the bullies didn't laugh. They just stared, wide-eyed, speechless, and humbled. By the next morning, whispers about what happened in the science lab had already spread across Southern Ridge High. The story had twisted and grown. Some said the new girl had thrown acid at Jake, others swore she'd planned it on purpose. By recess, Emily could feel the weight of 100 curious eyes following her down the hall. She kept her head low, clutching her books tight to her chest. Every step echoed louder than it should have. When she reached her locker, a group of girls nearby went quiet mid-laugh, smirking as she passed. One of them muttered, "Psycho genius," just loud enough for her to hear. Emily bit her lip and said nothing. She was used to rumors, they'd followed her from her last school too. But this time felt different. There was a sharpness in the air, something like fear disguised as mockery. Across the courtyard, Jake sat with his hand bandaged, glaring at her. His mates, Liam, Connor, and Matt, hovered around him like loyal guard dogs. The burns hadn't been severe, but his pride was scorched worse than his skin. "She made me look like a bloody idiot," he snapped. In front of everyone. Liam frowned. "Mate, it was an accident. You were the one who." Jake slammed his hand on the table. "Shut up. You saw her face. She didn't even flinch when it happened. Like she knew exactly what she was doing." Connor exchanged a nervous look with Matt. "You really think she planned it?" Jake's eyes narrowed. "She's not as innocent as she looks. No one reacts like that unless they've done it before." At that, he pushed up from the bench and stormed off, his mates trailing behind him reluctantly. Meanwhile, Emily sat in the library, staring blankly at a page that she hadn't turned in 10 minutes. Her mind replayed yesterday's chaos, the laughter, the spill, Jake's scream. She hadn't meant for him to get hurt. But when she'd seen that chemical falling, instinct had taken over. Her dad had drilled safety procedures into her since she was a kid. Her dad. She reached into her pocket and pulled out his photo, the same one Jake had mocked. He was smiling in his army uniform, proud and strong. The sight gave her a bit of comfort, though her eyes misted slightly. "You'd tell me to stand tall, wouldn't you, Dad?" she whispered. Just then, the library door creaked open. Emily looked up, and froze. Jake and his crew stood there, blocking the light from the hall. Jake's smirk was back, colder this time. "You reckon you're some kind of hero, yeah?" Emily closed her book slowly, her heart hammering. I didn't hurt you, Jake. You hurt yourself. Jake stepped closer, his shadow falling across her desk. Then maybe it's time we even things out. The air grew thick, heavy with tension. Emily's fingers curled into fists under the table. She had a feeling this confrontation wasn't going to end the way Jake expected. Jake's voice dropped to a low, dangerous growl as he leaned over the table. The library was empty except for the hum of the air conditioner and the faint scratch of the clock on the wall. Outside, rain began to patter softly against the windows, a calm before a storm no one saw coming. Emily didn't move. She met Jake's glare head-on, her pulse racing, but her eyes steady. You should leave, Jake, she said quietly. You've already embarrassed yourself once. That single sentence lit the fuse. Jake grabbed her book and hurled it across the room. You think you're smarter than everyone else. Think you can make me look weak. He spat, stepping closer until the edge of the table pressed against Emily's knees. Liam hesitated behind him. Mate, maybe just drop it. We'll get suspended if. Shut up, Liam, Jake barked, not taking his eyes off her. She started this. Emily stood then, slow and deliberate, forcing Jake to step back a little. Her voice didn't shake when she said, You started it when you couldn't stand that a girl knew more than you. Jake's jaw twitched. His hand shot out, gripping her arm roughly. Say that again. But before she could answer, the library door creaked again, and the librarian, Mrs. Collins, appeared at the far end. What's going on here? She demanded, her voice sharp as a whip. Jake instantly let go, stepping back with a fake smile. Nothing, miss. Just helping the new girl find her book. Mrs. Collins didn't buy it for a second. Her eyes darted between the scattered books on the floor and Emily's tense shoulders. Out. All of you, she said firmly. Now. The boys shuffled out, muttering under their breath. Emily stayed behind to pick up her things, her hands trembling slightly now that the moment had passed. Mrs. Collins knelt beside her and whispered gently, Don't let them get to you, love. Bullies like him thrive on fear. Emily nodded silently. But as she bent to grab her notebook, something metallic fell out of her bag, a small keychain engraved with her father's army insignia. Mrs. Collins noticed it and raised an eyebrow. Your dad served. Emily hesitated, then nodded. He trained soldiers, and ran chemical safety programs. He used to bring me to the base sometimes. Ah, Mrs. Collins said, a knowing look in her eyes. That explains the quick thinking yesterday. Later that afternoon, the rain turned into a storm. Thunder rumbled across the oval as Jake and his mates lingered behind the gym, plotting their next move. She made me look like a joke again, Jake snarled. Next time, we'll make sure she's the one begging. Liam shifted uneasily. Mate, maybe we should just. Jake cut him off. No. Tomorrow, during lab, we'll make sure she remembers not to mess with us. He grinned darkly, not realizing that Emily, just around the corner, had overheard every word. And this time, she wasn't going to run. The next day dawned grey and heavy, clouds hanging low over Southern Ridge High. The rain hadn't stopped all night, and puddles dotted the courtyard like mirrors reflecting the stormy sky. Inside the science building, students shuffled in, shaking off umbrellas and chatting lazily, everyone except Emily. She walked into the lab early, her face calm, her mind sharp. She knew what was coming. Jake and his mates had made it clear yesterday behind the gym. But she wasn't scared anymore, she was ready. When the bell rang, the boys swaggered in last, smirking like they owned the place. Jake caught Emily's eye and gave her a cruel grin. Morning, Einstein, he said, dropping his bag onto her table. Don't blow us up today, yeah. Emily didn't reply. She just turned back to her experiment sheet, pretending to read. But her heart was steady, her hands controlled. Mr. Harris started the class, explaining the reaction they'd be testing. Be careful, he warned. Some of these compounds are volatile. Follow every instruction exactly. Jake and his crew weren't listening. They were whispering, nudging each other, their attention fixed on Emily. When Mr. Harris turned to write on the board, Jake moved. He reached across the bench and switched two labeled bottles on Emily's table, one harmless, one not. Liam looked uneasy but said nothing. A few minutes later, Mr. Harris stepped out to grab equipment from the storeroom. The room fell silent except for the clink of glass. That's when Jake struck. Oi, new girl, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You sure you know what you're doing this time? Emily didn't look up. Positive, she said calmly. But you might want to take a step back. Jake smirked, but something in her tone made him pause. She picked up a dropper and held it above a beaker, the one he'd tampered with. Then she looked right at him. You swapped the labels, didn't you? The smirk vanished. What? I saw you, she said evenly. But I also saw the reflection in the glass cabinet when you did it. You thought I wouldn't notice. Liam's eyes widened. Jake. Before anyone could move, Emily lifted the beaker Jake should have had and poured it carefully into a separate tray. A puff of smoke hissed up instantly, harmless, but dramatic enough to make everyone jump. Jake stumbled back, tripping over a stool. The class burst into gasps and laughter. Emily didn't smile. That could have exploded if you'd been standing closer, she said quietly. Next time you try to mess with someone, make sure you know what you're mixing. Just then, Mr. Harris returned, and froze at the sight of the smoke, the scattered stools, and Jake on the floor. What on earth is going on here? The room fell silent. Emily calmly explained what Jake had done, her voice steady, precise, impossible to argue with. Mr. Harris turned on Jake, furious. You could have endangered everyone in this lab. Report to the principal's office, now. Jake didn't argue. His face was pale, his pride shattered. As he walked out, the rest of the class stared at Emily with a mix of awe and respect. When the bell rang, she packed up quietly, glancing once at her father's photo tucked in her notebook. Outside, the storm had finally broken. The sun pushed through the clouds, warm and bright. Emily walked out of the building, her reflection flickering in the wet pavement, no longer the timid new girl, but someone the whole school would remember.